picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, good morning, folks. Welcome to week 7 of the Enterprise build. Hopefully lucky week 7. And you know, every once in a while you have to step back and get out of your own head and stop thinking you know better than everybody else. Here's my case in point. I've been trying to come up with an idea to how to attach these Bassard collectors to the front of the nacelles, and thinking of everything under the sun, from magnets to, you know, gluing them on directly. Just trying to think, how can I best do it? And it struck me that maybe I should just shut up and read the instructions. Now, these are the adapter rings that they give you, and yes, they do work and they don't work. But to make the long story short, I thought, you know, before I get into anything more elaborate, spend more money, order magnets online, or do any of this stuff, maybe I should just at least try to do it the way the instructions state, and see if that works before I go to plan B or C. Why don't I give plan A a shot? So I did this Friday right after I finished my video for last week, and while it was, you know, editing on the computer, while it was, you know, processing. So I figured I'll give it a shot. I'll try it. What's the worst that could happen? If it doesn't work, then I will go to plan B. So, but here are the results. There you go. It is the simplest of all solutions. 2 tiny screws right here and right here. And when you line up, I'll use the other one to show you as a demonstration. But what you do is you put that in there, and you lock the screws, give it a little twist, and it's locked in place, and it works perfectly. No reason to get excited, as Jimi Hendrix once wrote, but no reason to, you know, reinvent the wheel when the wheel works perfectly fine by itself. So now that I know that works, I'm going to try to do it on the other one, which means flipping the old girl around so that I can get to it. But while I have this open, I wanted to, because I want to minimize the amount of times this is open, I want to further insulate the cavity in there with some foam to try to deaden the noise of the engine, and to wrap the engine with a little bit of the same type of foam that's on the base here, just the pipe insulation foam. Put that around the engine and stuff it all back in place, and proceed on to the next one. Okay, that may be as quiet as it gets, sorry to say. I've got foam around the engine. I've got a piece of foam packed in behind here. Now it does get a little bit quieter when I close off the back of it. You don't get that hollow sound. Hopefully you can hear the difference there. Because you're right, this does act as a big megaphone or an echo chamber. Once that's closed off, it does quiet it a bit. But that's just the sound of the warp engines a warping. Okay, I think I've sussed out the problem with this port nacelle. That originally when I looked at this, I was looking at the port nacelle, and that's what was discouraging me from using this idea at all. But when I went to the starboard nacelle, it worked fine. So back at the port nacelle, you can see the problem here is that this hole is bigger than the ring that goes in it, so that by time I try to find some meat behind these holes to put a screw in, I can't. So what I'm going to need to do is center this ring in the hole, which means it will fit better. The Bassard collector will fit better on it. And when I do that, I get plenty of meat on here and here, but not. What I want is 2 opposite holes, not 2 side-by-side holes. And when I push it this way to make, when I say meat, I need to have enough fiberglass behind it, resin, fiberglass, whatever, behind it to sink a screw into. And I can do that, you know, really nicely here and here, but not here where I need it. So what I'm going to do is mark where I want to put this hole, and then fill in this area, probably with the the hardest material I have would be probably the actual Bondo, but I don't want to use that because it's sloppy and it will run and it takes a while to set up. So what I'm going to do is use the epoxy putty and fill in just enough here to give me enough meat to sink a screw into. Okay, I'm getting ready to insert the Bussard collector. I've got the 2 screws buried in the hull. I've got the connections all made back up, and I am ready to put this back in and gently give it a little twist to lock it in place. And there you go, both nacelle fronts, both Bussard collectors are locked in, twisted in place. And now I'm just going to throw some power to it to see how they look. Oh, she's a noisy brute. In a perfect world, she would have less noise than that, but I am more than happy to let that little bit of noise slide by if that's all that it takes. It is not, it's got to be in the motors themselves, which I have muffled as much as I want to. It's not scraping. It's not the fact that the inner dome is scraping on anything. That's not the sound. The sound is coming directly from the motors themselves. And even though I have put foam in the back of the nacelles as well, so it does muffle it even more when there is the end caps are on. This one is definitely quieter than the first one, but that was the case with both of those motors from the start. But I am happy to leave it just as it is. Alrighty now, welcome to this week's episode of Meet the Parts. This is the saucer. This is the saucer for the big Enterprise. Now, you're very familiar with this part already. The bridge module that is already done and waiting to be plugged in. But you may not have seen the rest of the saucer parts. Sorry, I have to stand back to get it all in the frame. I'm already zoomed out as far as I can. To be familiar with the parts that make up the rest of the saucer. I will remove the bridge module. Like I said, you've seen that. Bridge module over to the side. What we have here is a nice big, now this looks like a wavy tortilla in some spots, and I do anticipate having to pull down the edge and epoxy it and hold it in place and get it to force it into its shape. You can see it's got a little bit of give there, but you see the start of the spine here going back to the impulse deck, which should be showing up hopefully any day now, the clear one. This is the front, that is the back, and you can tell by these indents that I need to cut out to make room for the nav lights and for the 4 corner or the 4 quadrant big lights on the top. And once we take that off, again, very excellently cast and done in fiberglass, but you can see that it's wavier than it needs to be. Here we have the internal structure. Now this actually goes in there, and that is the light chase for the planetary sensor. This is the armature. This is what bolts onto the there's the hole for the neck. That's what bolts onto the armature going down into the rest of the ship. This will have to be screwed in from the bottom and probably epoxied in from the top to keep it level and keep it in place. You can see it fits in very nicely, but probably put some screws in it through the bottom to pull it up, and then cover that work with Bondo putty from the outside. I want to try to keep this as light as possible, though. I don't want to introduce too much weight into the front of the kit. The thing weighs enough already. I'm thinking it's probably about 25 pounds at this point. 25 pounds. And it's very heavy. So what we're looking at here is, obviously we've got to chase wires for the navigation lights, and we also have to, let me pull this out, we also have to create light boxes for the 4-quadrant lights where the windows run. Here's the front windows here, and then the 4-quadrant windows. There's going to be light boxes that will be built for that, so that we don't have to run lights all the way around. That would just be wasteful and silly. But we can make little, like I say, light boxes. And then something similar for this. Probably I will end up covering the top of this with a round plate once it's done, and then just put lights down it from the top of the plate. This is and those will be warm whites. This, like the bridge on the top, this is the planetary sensor on the bottom. I will cover this over and put a cool white in there so that it shines down, and it will shine down through this detail, which will be attached from the bottom. So let's flip this over and take a look at it. Right now you can see the foam that I've got holding it up, and I'm going to be using those a lot because that's what's going to be needed to hold it level on the table. But you can see it's just going to end up looking something like that. And I need to start chopping out the windows. I'll start with the round ones because they're the easiest. And going back to the conversation we had a couple episodes ago about symmetry, here are your famous starboard corner windows. Those are the most iconic windows in all of science fiction. And they need to be repeated, or they actually need to be mirrored over here, because this was designed to emulate the filming model where it just had 2 little dinky windows here and didn't have the full set. But as you know, I'm a firm believer in the symmetry of these windows, and that this pattern was intended to be mirrored over here. So what I did was I traced these off, really. I took a piece of tape, put it over the indents, made a rubbing of it, flipped it over, spaced it out using the center windows as a measurement. I measured from here to here to get my measurement of how far away from the center those windows should be, and took that window there, measured the same distance, and then I traced the windows back onto that side. Now I figured the easiest way to make my pattern for cutting them out was to go ahead and put some window masks on it. Figuring these are the 2 you can see by the indent. These are the 2 that are provided in the kit. These are the other ones that need to be added. So what I'm going to do is spray this area with a primer filler, and then peel the masks out, and that will tell me exactly where I need to chop the holes for the windows. Okay, there's the saucer top with all of the holes cut out of it, with the bridge module in place for a sense of scale. Basically it's these 4-quadrant holes, and the one up front, I need to open that up a little bit more. And then these smaller ones, which get the big running lights, the big nav lights, the green one on that side and the red one on that side. So now I'm going to take this outside and put what I'm assured will be the first of many coats of filler primer on it. Now it's starting to look something a little bit more familiar. It's several coats of flat primer filler on it, and we'll let that cure. But you can start to see some of the familiar contours come out. You can never tell what kind of shape the fiberglass is in until you put primer on it. You can see the wavy taco-ness here. That's going to have to be looked at, but not at all worried about it, because it's really very thin at the end, and I should be able to bring it down in line pretty easily. Well, it's taken a few minutes, but I've got the first set of windows carved out. These are the iconic front starboard windows, starboard quarter panel windows. Of course, everything's up here is upside down. So, but this stuff is tedious to work with, but not all that difficult. It's kind of soft. It's not all that. It's not like, you know, carving through stone or anything. It's just takes a while to get used to. And of course, since it's fiberglass, you got to make sure that you have. I don't have a glove on this hand, but I have a glove on this hand where I am using it to wipe down and stuff, because those little fiberglass hairs get everywhere. But I'm just cleaning out some of the bigger round windows and filing, and of course I've got all the portholes drilled out, and that's easy enough to deal with because that's just the drill bit, but then you have to go back in and square out the bigger windows. So this work continues, and I'll let you know when I'm done with it. Alrighty, now this is where we're going to stop for today, but I've got all of the windows bored out, and again, a little oversized so that I can close them down with the masking, but they're all cut in. This is not glued down, but I wanted to show you what it looked like. Now, all windows cut out, and first coat of the primer sealer on it, and checked a couple different sources, and this is where my theory on symmetry kind of falls down, because the entire underside of the saucer was on camera, except for maybe this back quadrant here. You always, I mean, they probably showed the underside of the saucer more times than they showed the top side. So I can't think that, like these little windows here, the fact that they're not here doesn't bother me. This is not symmetrical to this, but it was I don't think it was intended to. This is not symmetrical. It's got these two little boxes that go here, but the underside of the saucer, with the fact that it's got a hatch here and one window and two windows over here, that doesn't bug me at all. If I was going to be just a dyed-in-the-wool completionist, I would probably transfer these four windows over to here, but I'm not going to bother doing that because I believe, and I also checked with the Polar Lights issue 350 scale kit, and it does not have anything over here either. So if they're happy, that means Gary Carr's happy. That means I'm happy. So what I'm going to let this do is, I guess, just dry overnight, do a little light sanding on it tomorrow, and put another coat on it. Well, welcome back. It is Tuesday, and it's window day. Really, I got these cleaned out yesterday, and I got the primer on them. So we're ready to put some dental acrylic in them and make some windows. Now, I've learned a lot since the last time I did this on the secondary hull, so hopefully I will bring those lessons along. But the first thing I did this morning was to sand as much as I could on the inside here to get rid of these loose little fiberglass fibers. Oddly enough, there are fibers in fiberglass, hence the term. But to clean out the window openings, this one is being particularly difficult for some reason. I am going to yank that one out of there. There. Get these window openings nice and clean. It's going to be tougher because there's not really any flats, like laying it down flat, so I'm going to have to like do these at an angle and then, move on to the next one and kind of hold the ship in weird angles to make sure that the acrylic is flat against them. So that should be a little bit more difficult than the secondary hull was, but we will get on to it. Now, the big holes, the big gaps, the big gaping openings in the top of the saucer, those actually have acrylic pieces that are meant to go into them. And if I can use this as an example, this sheet of paper as an example, I'm going to be making a box that looks something like this. A box something like this with a top on it that is going to make a window box for the lighting for the quadrants. And when you sit the top on the top of the saucer down on the secondary hull, the white shape here is going to give me the light that has to come up and also light this top box. I mean, that's how it was done on the filming kit, or on the filming model. There were really only, well, 3 sections of lights, because the one back there was never even actually lit. But that one was lit, this one was lit, and that one was lit, and they basically had access holes. And that's why also sometimes you can get into the whole rabbit hole story about the whether or not this port in the center was ever lit, because they needed to snake lights down the saucer to light these 3 windows, and the only way to really get into it was the access hole that they cut right here, which let me get the top part for a second. Yeah, the top of the saucer is now sitting on the bottom section, and here you can see This is where that top light will come up from the box that I am making below it. Same thing here. Box will also light that up. But this little hole here, sometimes you see it lit and sometimes you see it painted over. But basically what it was an access to get to these 3 forward facing windows. So I'm going to light it up because I think it probably should be lit. So I'm going to light that. And then there are the 2 big holes, and this one back here was the one that was never lit. But I'm going to light it, obviously, because we're going to have actual windows behind there. Okay, here you can see the armature structure in the saucer. Now what I need to do is to create a box, a light box for lack of a better term, that comes up from here, fills this area flat, and will allow me to make a light channel so that I can put the strip lighting. Basically, I'm still thinking this out as I go. What I'd like to do is cut a circle, attach strip lighting to that circle, turn the circle upside down, and sit it in here. Sit it on top. Well, I have to cut a circle. I have to cut a hole in the center, but because I don't want to cut away too much of this support. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. I need to cut, I actually just did. I cut a circle out of the white plastic sheet styrene. And what I'd like to do is attach the strip LEDs to the underside of this. And that will blast light out into all of these, nice and evenly, one would hope. But it would not handle these ones that fall outside of the circle. So I'm going to have to come up with some way to additionally light those. Now I've got lighting that needs to happen on these ones and as well, so there are others that will benefit from whatever I do. Well, I've got the windows filled in with the dental acrylic. We'll see how well that goes in a minute. It has decided to come up with a full rainstorm outside, thunder and lightning and all of that, so that obviously puts the cancellation on any outside painting today, meaning more coats, more primer coats on the saucer. Can't do that in the house, can't do it outside, so ipso fatso can't be done. But I've got the, you can see the windows taped off, but I've got the acrylic in. It's a different acrylic than I used on the secondary hull. I ran out of that. So I'm dipping into another supply, and they're taking, it looks like, a little bit longer to dry, or to cure. So I'm going to let that go, and if it doesn't bode well, I may have to reapply, who knows. Okay, I've got an issue. I stripped the tape off of these a while ago, and they're still not drying up right, and I'm thinking, you can see I ran out of this, the stuff that Elliot sent me, and I was using the stuff that came with the kit, and I'm wondering if it got stale over the years or just didn't stay fresh, because it's not curing, and it's soft, and it certainly should have cured by now. So I think what I'm going to need to do is run out and get some fresh stuff, but it ain't going to happen today because it's thunder and lightning and storming out, so that'll be my goal for tomorrow. But the ones that I did with the old stuff before I had to switch, I can kind of tell the difference, and I think it's something as simple as, yeah, I'm going to have to go get some fresh powder. Oh, you can hear the thunder now. Okay, signing off. Okay, something that's been bugging me since I've had a time to sit down and take a look at it. I think that I put my pennants on too far forward. I didn't slide them, where's my finger? I didn't slide them back far enough. This is a picture of the ship as she sits in the Smithsonian, and for all things important, this is my reference. My reference is how they turned out looking at the Smithsonian. Well, my pennant is further up than that. See where the, well, let's see if I can't really tell it on this picture per se. but the front end of the delta there, it's right about where the swoop of the gray part is. It's very close to the swoop of this part that's painted gray. Now we're going to go over to the model, and the color balance is going to change. But what has happened is that this is very far forward of this, and there's the swoop I'm talking about, which means the back of it should come back to there. Now, where did I get this number, you ask? Well, I got this number from the instructions. So the instructions say, and right here is where it says it. It says, end of red banner is located 3.84 from the rectangular vent. Showing that piece right there. The end of that banner should be at 3.84 from the rectangular vent. And this is what 3.84 looks like. And that's what it happens when you put it up against there, 3.84. So what I'm thinking, maybe they meant 2.84. So what I'm going to do is, since this is vinyl, and the nice glorious thing about it being vinyl is that I can move it. I can pull this up and move everything back, plot another set, and move it back to where I think it should be. I think the back end of it should come to about there. So if I move the whole thing back an inch, that will bring it more in line with where I think this should be. Okay, here's another picture of the restoration work before it was put on display, and you can clearly see this is a lot closer here. More of it is covered by the intercooler, and that distance is a lot less. Okay, here's another reference picture that shows that even better. You can see clearly that this is in the same general area as the swoop that goes under this gray shape. And you can see how much of this is covered by the intercooler and how close these are together. Yeah, I think what I need to do is move mine. So if you missed me putting decal or these registries down the first time, you get to see it the second time. Good morning, it's Wednesday, and it is time to get back to the Enterprise saucer build, and we're going to play my favorite game of one of these things is not like the other. Found out what the problem was with the window nail acrylic. It's white instead of clear. This is what I got. This is what's in the kit. No label, no nothing. Doesn't say anything about other than the fact that it's the dental acrylic. That's what came in the kit. Now, this is what Elliot Brown sent me. This is very clearly says clear, acrylic powder clear. And that's what I used on the bottom windows. Now, this I had filled it up with the other stuff just to make it easier to work with. This is not a full jar of this. I had run out of it. But this is what I used on the secondary hull. And they gave me those lovely windows. And I had some left over, and I was going about my business on the saucer when I ran out. So I went back to what the kit had provided, which was this, and I poured some into this little jar so that I could make it easier to work with. But this has no label. This has the look and the consistency and the smell of the other stuff, so I figured it was the same as the other stuff. Well, I was wrong. I noticed it was taking longer to dry, and when it did dry, it wasn't looking right. This is original. This is the new stuff. Now, when you put it up to a light, there is virtually no difference. But it looks like crap when you have them next to each other on the unlit kit. So I'm going to drill all of these out, go to the beauty supply store, which is always a favorite place for me to show up, and buy some new clear powder. Okay, welcome back to what promises to be a fairly manic Wednesday. I gotta tell you, so many things happening today. I'm expecting the replacement domes and my impulse deck to come in the mail today. I got the invoice yesterday for the boards from Ralph, so those could show up as early as today or tomorrow, depending on what postage system you used. So I'm getting ready for that. I've got to run out and get replacement powder for the windows for the saucer. But what I'm working on right now is this tunnel for the lower planetary sensor, and it's just like I did the bridge. It's a tube stuffed with fiber fill that you put this dome over it, and then the whole thing, or this glues up to the bottom of the saucer, but this kind of goes in the bottom of the saucer, and that's kind of where I'm at today. I want to do some of that light work while I am redoing those windows at the same time. I've got a couple of orders in, so I've got to take care of those, which is good because I'll be in the dining room working on the saucer anyway. I got this stripped off yesterday, and I'm just trying to keep my head on a swivel today because it looks like it's going to be about a day. Okay, you're going to have to pardon the sound of the plotter plotting in the background, but mail call has come today, and look at these beauties. These are the set of replacement domes from Mr. E from Talsetti, who now owns all the parts and kits. And please talk to him about getting one of these kits for yourself. As much as I'd love to answer your questions about it, I simply can't. He's the guy to talk to. And this little beauty is the clear-ish impulse deck. Now, he had already had this painted for something that he was doing, so I need to put this in the stripper first thing to get rid of the paint over these two spots, but and then ironically paint the rest of it. But this needs to go into the stripper, and these are going to get a coat of flat clear just to frost them a bit, because that clear is going to let you see too much detail inside. I like this amount of detail, but if it's clear upon clear, then you're going to see too much detail. So we'll do that. See, you can see those in place, and I'm afraid it's just a little too visible there. So yeah, I'm going to want to frost that, but let me see what it looks like with the lights on. Well, there's the difference between the old one and the new, and yeah, that's just too dang visible. So a frosting it will get. Okay, I think I've eliminated as many variables as I can on these blinking windows. This is what I found. I went out to try to find within a, not having to spend weeks ordering something online and not having to drive 100 miles to find it. This was the closest I could find. It is the exact same materials that Elliott Brown sent, plus a little extra. So if any of you happen to need any French nail tips, I've got them. Lord knows what you want to do with them, but hey, I got them. Send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. I will be happy to send you all of these fake nails. But it does give me the clear powder and the monomer, which is the same product that Elliott sent me the first time. So hopefully should be able to duplicate the same results on the saucer as I did on the secondary hull. Okay, I'm taking advantage of a rare bit of quiet time in the studio here to make the following points. A, yes, this is reusing that same dental acrylic or nail acrylic that Elliott had sent me originally. Going out, finding that, and redoing all those windows, that was key, because I had no problem at all with this. They went down like a charm, nice and clean, nice and clear, beautiful. And second of all, test fitting the saucer on again. I'm coming up with the same point that I had when I first pulled the whole thing out on the table and set it up, and that is this bit of the armature needs to come down, and you can see about by how much. It needs to sit on the inside. It needs to sit on the inside of the saucer. It is about, well, let's pull back and zoom and show you. Pencil. It's about an eighth of an inch too high, and if you look here, by the same coincidence, this is about an eighth of an inch too high right here. So if I could sink that down, I'm sorry, the outside frame is an eighth of an inch too high from the center. If I could sink that down, we will be perfectly matched up. But I want you to look at a thing of beauty. That, my friends, is a thing of beauty. That joint, I couldn't get any better if I had 3 wishes and a genie gave me 2 of them. That's beautiful. That is out of the box beauty right there. So I know that that is set and that's good to go. So what I want to do is strip this armature out again, take the dish off, and then I want to open up the holes that these bolts go through so that I can slide it down. So the holes need to go down a little bit so that I can slide the armature down and tighten it up from there. Okay, after much fretting and fratting, I am very much happy with this. Up to this point, I am very happy. I've got that hole elongated so that this is sitting. That is still a beautiful joint. That is sitting where it needs to be. I screwed up somewhere. That screw and this screw are just hitting each other. So I'm going to have to remove both of these screws and put 2 more further back that are going to have to be sunk down in rather than come up through bolts. I may have to cut those bolts off completely because they're just interfering too badly with this. That's just worlds better. 2 beefy screws going down in, and that freed up this bolt here to be tightened. I still have the remnants of those, and I like them for locator pegs, but I might shore them down or shear them down just a little bit to keep them from interfering with that bolt. But yeah, very much happier with that. Welcome back. It's Thursday, and today's episode of This Old Starship, we are going to start working on the lighting for the underside of the saucer. I want to take a moment or 2 out to catch you up on what I got in the mail yesterday, and that is the impulse deck and the replacement orange domes. And I've done a little work on them. I had to strip the paint off of the impulse deck because Greg had gotten them painted, but this was the only one he had on hand already cast, and I didn't want to wait for him to cast another one. So he sent it to me, and I stripped the paint off of it, and I'm playing with ideas for a grill effect. I kind of like that. So we'll bury a couple lights into it like we did the fantail, and then that will go, it goes right here. So I can cut through here on either side of that and put in a couple of 5mm LEDs and we'll be great. And these are, excuse me, these are the domes. Now I have flat coated them. I put a dull coat over the top of it, which obscured them and made them not as clear to see through. So I'm going to test those out and see how much more they obscure the light coming out of the front of the Bassards. But I think they look tremendous. So I think frosting did the trick, dull coating. Yes, you could still see the bulbs in there. Yes, that's a little obvious. But it's no more obvious than the display at the Smithsonian, which is what I'm trying to emulate. But I like the overall orange a lot better than, let me turn this light off, than the clear version over here. I do like that orange tinting. And it looks better when the lights are off, which is important. Probably the more important part of it is that when our lights are off, you can still see orange there, and I do like the look of that. So yes, it looks like I will be replacing these. Okay, that was a fun little diversion, but now we're back to lighting. And what I want to do is, this obviously goes, before I can glue this thing down, and when I mean glue it, I mean screws up through the bottom and epoxy and all manner of permanent attachment. So before we do that, I need to work on this cavity here. And what I'm thinking of doing is taking this, and again, think of it upside down, building a wall on it that is like maybe out here, not that far out, and build a wall that I can attach a strip of LEDs to. The same warm whites that I used in the secondary hull. So what I've done is taken my little feeler gauge here and made a inner profile of the secondary or the lower saucer here. So that tells me that at the place that I want to make the light wall, I don't have any windows or anything that happen before this point. So if the lowest window in the whole place is right here. So I can put the wall anywhere before that, and it'll shoot light out to the rest of the saucer. So if I want to make my wall right about here, then I can make it up to about an inch tall. So that's a good place to start. So let's do that. I need to cut an inch strip out of the thin styrene and glue it down on this so that when I flip the whole thing over, it will sit properly. Okay, this little UFO looking thingy is my ring for the bottom of the saucer. So let's pop it in place and see how it looks. Now I've got wire strung to it and just held on by the faintest of fainties. So let me see if I can tape this down and try to make something a little more temporarily permanent. Okay, I've got this taped down so you can kind of see what it's going to look like. Now all I need to do is, yeah, just gently flip over the whole saucer. It's easier said than done. So give me another second. And there you go. Very, very good. Some light leaks to deal with, but you know, we're way early in stages here. We haven't even put a second coat of primer on this yet. Once I put these window masks down and can prime over top of them, that will tell us a lot more. But yeah, that's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. Now there's a couple of these, like this one here and these two, that are kind of outside of that cone of light, and I'm going to have to deal with them separately. Hopefully some ambient light will take care of a lot of that, but also I may have to dangle something off of the armature to take care of those lights. But you can see where I've got some light blocking that I need to take care of, probably on inside and outside, but gives me a good heads up of where to start. But yeah, that's doing the trick. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, I just masked those windows on the inside and put down a quick coat of white primer on there to help reflect the light back, because, well, I did it now because I'm going to get ready to seal that up, and of course I'll remove the masks first. But you know, I want to help bounce the light around a little bit, so a little bit of white primer helps with the light blocking that is going to need to happen. Won't have to put as much on from the outside if I can get one good coating on the inside. So we'll let that dry for a bit, and the hot glue gun is heating up, and first thing I'm going to do is hot glue this down like I did on the armature of the secondary hull, just to belt and suspenders, just so that it won't come loose, just in case the adhesive on the back of the strip comes loose. I'll have hot glue under reinforcing it, and I'll put some over the wire connections there. Okay, I've got the gray lady here on the table in the living room, and yes, the camera gives you that wide angle fisheye look. That's a distortion that's happening from the camera. Got the saucer bolted down, that joint there, perfectly perfect. This kind of bugged me. I was worried about this. I thought, well, have I really screwed up because the neck is attached as good as it's going to get? Does this mean it's out of level? Well, then I realized it was designed to have this ring, not the bubble, but it was designed to have the ring in place before you put it on there. So you take that piece, since that piece isn't on, I take something that is the correct width, which is basically another piece of this, another piece of the jig. And well, hold on, let me pick it up. Another piece of the jig, which is that same thickness, and then that gets me right back to where I should be as far as whether it's level or not. So there, it took care of itself. These windows look beautiful with the ceiling lights shining down through them. But let me see if I can get some power to this bit, and then we'll be able to see those lights. But the important thing that I want to do now is get this marked out and maybe get a tiny screw up through there and get some epoxy on it epoxy on both of your houses, to get some epoxy on it, and then I can do the horizontal brace as well. There you go. The lit portion is, this is what's been hot glued down, and let's see what it looks like from underneath. Bom, 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 bom. Beautiful. Very nice. Now these very deep lines obviously need some light blocking, but that's all kinds of pretty. And there should be, yep, the 3 lights back there. So wonderful. Now that I know that's working, I need to get the level on this and see how close it is. Okay, I've got the saucer level, even though it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's, well, it doesn't look like it's level because it's touching that line, but that is precisely the amount of out of level this table is. So it is parallel to the table. If you go down here and look at the bubble on the table, you see it's in the same spot right beneath it. So I am happy with that. Most importantly, I know that I am happy with the ability to tweak that levelness using just these 2 bolts. There's a window box that has to go in front of where these windows are, so you can see that the armature is notched out for that. I will build a box around that and slide the LEDs in from the side, and then that will also give me the glow that comes up through the top round circle here. The other boxes are not affected by the armature. Both the green and red running lights are affected by the armature, so I will need to drill into the top of the armature just so I have a space to put the LED. Now you can see the bottom is already opened up, and that's opened up for the running light that goes on the bottom. There's a pair of white LEDs that go on the bottom, but I need to drill into this to have room for the red and greens to come up through the top. Okay, well, I had no success at all with the screws. Either they wouldn't go all the way in or they would snap off. The heads of them would snap off. The important lesson in all of that is that acrylic is not wood. And when they give you wood screws to screw in acrylic, it's not a good bet. So, I've got everything clamped down, and I've got epoxy on all of its houses. We're going to see how much more reinforcing it needs after that. But we're going to let this set up for the rest of the night, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. It's time to pat myself on the back for how well this came out. That is not going anywhere, my friends and neighbors. That is well and truly affixed. But now it is time to put in the 4-corner, what I call the 4-corner light boxes for the 4 quadrants of the windows, plus this little guy up here. So I guess 5. The 5 quadrants. That's that new math I keep hearing so much about. So what I've done is I have traced out the circumference, the outer edge of the saucer on this piece of sheet styrene, thicker stuff. And what I need to do is cut that out and just cut it out. I'm going to cut it out and make boxes that look something like this, where you have a stay on each side. Oops, helps if I get it in camera. I've been accused of putting everything of interest off and to the left because I'm over here working, and I've never got never have the subject in camera. So I'm taking more care to do that. But it's going to look something like this: 2 side walls, a back wall that will have strip LEDs in it, and then a top, a functional top that will let the light shine up through the top, which will light up the 4 boxes that are on the top of the hull. And these will sit below the level of the saucer top, but will kind of sit right on top of it. It's also going to give me structural support because I have to nail down that saucer lid, as many different places as possible to bring it down into shape. And it's possible that I will end up making, even between these light boxes, I will end up making little blocks that I could screw the top down to. I have not exactly figured out the sequence of events that's going to allow me to do that, because I need to figure out, see, that's the small box that goes there. I need to figure out exactly what's going to be the most economic of time and of materials to paint the saucer. I have a feeling I'm going to, do obviously as much work in construction and all of that good stuff, wiring and all that good stuff on the saucer bottom and on the saucer top. Take them outside, spray the paint on it, and then finish construction, and then I'm going to have to airbrush the edge once I am here putting the final putty and everything on it. So let's stop yammering and start building some boxes. Okie, this is what the boxes look like now. I have, they're not, down to the micron conforming to the inside of the contours of the saucer, because, hey, that's what putty is for, or that's what, epoxy is for. But they basically all share the same characteristics. They have a top, a back, and two sides. And what that is going to do is I'm going to line the back with LEDs, pop it in like that, and not only will it shine forward to shine the windows, but it'll also shine up through this white, and that will illuminate the 4 quadrant windows. They never really said what those actually were. They're certainly not windows. They're big ass skylights, and again, in space all windows are skylights, but they never really said what those could be used for. But they are big, and they are rectangular, and they light up. So by sitting that on the saucer piece on top of that, it's going to transfer the light up through there. So what I need to do now is wire them up, get the LED strip in, and just basically make a big old chain that's going to start there, work its way around to there, and then join up with those saucer, the lower saucer lights. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the 4 light boxes wired. They are in a big chain. They are connected to the wires that go to the lights underneath. So the next thing to do is to go grab go grab the power source and hook it up to it, and make sure everything is running. And then we get the hot glue gun out and we mount all these in place. Well, that's just lovely. I've got the boxes taped down or tacked down with glue, and now that I can see precisely where they are, everybody's happy. Light shining out the windows. That's good. More importantly, the lights are hot glued to the insides of the boxes, so that if the adhesive on the back of the strip lighting gives away, then they're still held in place with the hot glue. And I know I'm repeating myself, but sometimes I repeat myself, and then other times I just repeat myself. So here we go. What I'm going to do now is whip up probably a good batch of the JB Weld and put it on the sides here of the boxes, and maybe on the back. And the only other thing to do after that is to do a trial run with the top of the saucer taped down and see how that looks. Let's do that first. Okay, I call that a big old honkin' success. Get the light over here. These are shining up nice and bright. Not too bright, not so much that it's, blinding. I've got the clear plastic inserts to go in these holes, and that'll be the next thing, and probably the last thing that I am going to do today. Shut down early on a Friday for once. I got confirmation that my boards are on the way. They're in the mail. I've got a tracking number and all that. So hopefully we'll start out next week, which will be a short week. Next week on getting everything all tied up. But let me pull this off so it doesn't go take a tumble when I move the saucer. But now you look at the windows, and taping this together for the first time really it confirmed that I had nothing to fear, because I was really afraid of this being, having warped too far out of shape, or the years of storage taking their toll on it. But it taped down nice and easily. Now I'm still going to put reinforcing blocks around the inside, but I was kind of afraid that it would either have been, be too small, and I'd have to pull in, do a lot of, manual labor pulling in these edges. But no, I think it's going to be fine. Not going to be, not that it's not going to be work, but it's not going to be as much work. So let me see if I can get around to the iconic front windows. If we do this view and we do something like that, yeah, now we're talking. Now we're talking. Yes, the camera is blowing out the windows, or the light is blowing out a little bit too much. Oh, do this. This will be hanging out back here. And let's do this while we're at it. Okay, we'll do this, that, and this. There you go. That's holding everything in place. There you go. Okay, here's the sexy bit with the light shining through. And you can see the saucer lights all lit. Up here, up there. The front lights are getting lots of attention. And you can see some holes here that have to be puttied back over from where I was screwing around literally with screws last night and decided not to do that. So those holes have got to be plugged. These ones not very well lit because there's no light source behind them. But that tells me I'm going to have to do something about those on both sides. This is getting a little bit of spill light, but it wouldn't hurt to reinforce those. And then I can really see where the light blocking needs to happen. Okay, so I've got the 4-5 clear bits in, and yeah, they're rough as hell because I got CA on my finger and glued myself to the clear bit for a little bit. But it won't be the first time I've left DNA in a kit. I prefer thinking of giving it that personal touch. And I'm going to be frosting them anyway, so I'm going to be sanding them over and scuffing them down and all that, so it don't really matter. I'll sand all that stuff off, but this is where the kit is going to, or the top of the saucer at least, is going to rest for the rest of the weekend. And that, my friends, is where we're going to end it for this week. Got a bit of a frantic weekend coming up, so I don't mind getting done a little bit early today. So I can get the stuff uploaded and put together and edited and all that kind of stuff, and still have somewhat of a life, just that much. Hope you don't begrudge me that much. So what did we get done this week? Oh, we got a lot of work done on the saucer. It's going much faster than the secondary hull is. Maybe I just know what I'm expecting to do a lot better. Of course, there was that wasted day, the day that was a wash of putting the windows on the first time because I was using the wrong, I believe it was the wrong powder. So going out and getting a fresh new powder made all the difference because they just flew through the next day. But got some important work done as far as making sure the saucer will fit with the secondary hull. That's key. I mean, you could almost forgive a drooping nacelle, but you can't forgive a saucer that is out of level or is hanging down in the front. There's just no excuse for it. So, oh, and I got the replacement domes in this week from Greg, and those look tremendous. So until next week I think is going to be a bit of a short week. I'm getting ready for the Nougatats, so I can't spend too much time on it, on the kit. So we'll see how much gets done and how much we have to wait until after I come back to finish up. So until next week when we do all of that, you be good to each other, or I'll find you. And we'll see you here next week. If I still live through this cough. Be good.